Recording now. Okay, so obviously, and there'll be, as I walk through, I really just wanted to go through the process really from absolute scratch and show how things essentially, all the essential elements of PCB design are done using CircuitStudio. And along the way, there'll probably be questions or things like that feedback from demos or customers that you need answers for. So feel free to just jump in and ask. It doesn't matter if we go in a straight line today. The primary purpose of this is to give you guys a really solid overview of how things kind of work and what some of the technical limitations or technical enablements are in this tool, and so on. So to start with, you're familiar with the start page, and really this essentially is a special version of the CircuitStudio.com website. You'll recognize all of these drop-down menus and things that are part of the regular website. At the moment, the first place it takes you to when you initially begin in CircuitStudio and launch it as software, the first thing it's going to do is recognize that it's been installed but you don't have a license. So besides the start page, which is where it will take you after you have a license, after an initial installation, this will be the place that you go. So licenses are generated, and although they are standalone only for CircuitStudio, they still have to be activated, and the easiest way to do that is with the user's credentials, which are generated when they become a new customer for this product, or start to, they get in touch with you guys, they get an evaluation, and we generate an account for them in our back-end CRM system. They get a username and password, and so it will say there's no license. You need to add a license. So there's basically two ways to get the license in here. We can activate the license through our web portal. At the moment, I believe that's not an option for new CircuitStudio users to do that through our online dashboard, because that, for example, with let me open a new tab here. How that's normally would be, you go to live.altium.com, and as an owner of licenses, you sign into Altium Live. I'm already signed in, so you can see I'm signed in here. But you get this dashboard, and in the dashboard, you can go to licenses. Of course, I'm in Altium Corporate, so I've got all sorts of test licenses and seats of different products here. But what I could do is see that I have a license for CircuitStudio and go into that license and activate it here, and then download a license file. So that's normally how that would look. And in CircuitStudio, let me go back here, you would actually go ahead and add that after downloading as a standalone license file. So you can take that .alf file and add it here. Obviously, doing that activation, it activates and it records your IP address when you activate, but it's not specifically tied to this computer's hardware. It is possible to delete a license file and then re-add it when you have a new installation somewhere else. If two computers on the same network segment see that they're both using the same license file, one of them will be disabled. So, we have kind of made it easy for people to reactivate a license if they move to a new computer, and that's really what they should do. Rather than copy the license file, what they should really do is come in here and say reactivate and regenerate a new license file for the new machine, which records their IP address. That's the proper way to do it. If they copy a license file and put it on two machines, one of them will switch off. The normal way to activate is just sign in. I can sign in using my regular credentials. You've probably all been through this process by now. And I can see I have a few CircuitStudio licenses available to me as an Altium staff member, and this one hasn't been used. Well, I can't activate that because it's expired already, but if I see an available license here, and I can see what its expiry date for the license and expiry date for subscription, this just means how long can I use this, because this is a more traditional licensing model where you purchase the seat and it you get a perpetual license for this version of the tool, but there's on top of that there's subscription to get upgrades and things like that. So that's why we have the two dates, and I can activate or reactivate a license from in here. If somebody else has activated a license in my company, I can reactivate it, but that essentially deactivates it for them. So it'll force them to stop using it.
Could I ask, in the application I've got, I'll be installing this on my my laptop at work, but because I'll be sort of in the learning process all the time, I've got a laptop at home. So will that be easy to basically for me to move from A to B just by deactivating it here, then when I go home, reactivating it there?
Well, in your case, that's why we have the online activation, and what you normally should do is you should actually activate the license through the portal and use this add standalone license file to each of the computers that you use. You are allowed to use that in more than one computer. It just means that if both of them are switched on the same network at the same time, only one of them will remain enabled. The others will say, you'll get a little warning pop up saying the same license is in use on another machine, and it'll give you enough time to save your work, and then all the icons will go grey.
No, but that's fine. It's in my case, I'm either going to be at work or at home. Both computers will never be on at the same time.
Yeah, so it's really not a problem.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you sell the customer a subscription, how does that process work? Will the customer get an email with an activation code, or is that something that's renewed on the back end when they sign into their account? Yeah,
it's entirely handled on the back end. So okay. It's not physically stored in the license file. The license file, when it's generated, does have well, let me put it this way. The license file, you can see here that these ones are timed. And so if it's an evaluation license, it will have an expiry. So that license file encoded within the file does have a timeout. For a normal license that somebody purchases at full price, it won't ever expire. It has an empty expiry date. But the subscription is handled by online. So normally what happens is, actually, you know what? I'm not entirely telling the truth. I think this is stored in the license file as well. But either way, it doesn't really make any difference, because to upgrade the software, you have to connect and get online and run the updates anyway. And when you do that, it checks if the license that you're using, it actually checks it and takes the date from our back-end system anyway to say, yes, you're entitled to an update.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is, when we first brought in this new way of doing licensing, we had a lot of discussion internally about how it should work, and what we decided on was that you can actually, if your company owns a valid subscription, it will let you install an update to the software. Even if that's only on one of several licenses that you have. But if the license that you're currently using has expired subscription, and the software's been updated beyond that date, it will actually disable. It will disable the software and tell you basically that you need a license that has a valid subscription, if that makes sense. It'll make you roll back to an earlier version if you need to use an earlier version license. Does that make sense? Yes, that does.
Now, you touched a little bit on updates. So I know that when you log into CircuitStudio, there's a window that prompts you to run an update because it's available.
Yep.
But there are times when that window is not coming up. So where would the customer look for the update in order to?
Yep, that's a fantastic question. And the interesting thing is that little. I want to make some changes to that little pop-up to say, you know, when you click, do you want to update now? It should just go ahead and do it because you've said yes. At the moment, what it does is it actually just takes you to this extensions and updates page right here. So to check for updates, which I like to do like manually in case that dialog didn't appear or it appeared but I clicked the close button before I really read what it was saying. Updates appear in here. This extensions and updates page is actually an important one to really dig into because it's kind of web-based. It doesn't work the same way with buttons and icons that the rest of the software would use. So if you're ever wanting to look to get back to here, if I close this and it's like you're starting completely from a blank screen like this, really the first thing you want to do is open your start page. And then, as I said, as I was discussing, all your license management stuff is here on my account. And there's a few other useful functions like open recent designs that you were working on. But to check for updates, you always go down here to extensions and updates. Now, updates to the software will always appear on this updates tab. Yep. What was the question?
On my home laptop, my resolution is not high enough to display that extension and update on there. I just wonder if there might be a hotkey or something that you could bring that page up with.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think there is, and maybe we should address that. Although we have kind of early on said that I don't know what's your vertical resolution on that machine? Is it 720?
Well, it's 1600 by 900, I believe.
So 900 should be okay, but it probably depends on the text scaling. So if your screen's really small, you probably have. Let me show you my desktop here. Can you guys see my desktop?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we go into oh, come on, slow machine. See, I have a nice big screen, but my computer's slow. Okay, there it is. If we go into personalize, I'm using Windows 8, so it's a little bit different depending on what operating system you're on. If you're on Windows 7, it's kind of the same if you go and personalize and display. You see this screen font scaling? Most new machines nowadays that have little screens have reasonable resolution, but the screen itself is really small. So out of the box from the factory, they come with 150 or 200% set as the font size. Now we do support these font scalings in CircuitStudio. We've actually done a lot of work to make sure things appear correctly and buttons don't disappear like they used to in older versions of our software. The problem is once you start scaling the fonts, all of these things get much, much larger, and that's what's pushing it off the bottom of the screen. So I think if you're using font scaling, you really need to set, and we should probably update the documentation to reflect this, to say if you're using 100% font scaling, you can go down to basically about 800 pixels vertical resolution would be okay, or 720. But if you're going, like I'm currently running at 100% font scaling, and I'm on 1080p, which is normal full HD resolution, which is the typical 20-inch monitor that somebody would have these days. And you can see how close to the bottom that is. I wouldn't really want to scale my fonts beyond 150% at this resolution, or this might disappear. So we probably need to update our documentation to say the minimum resolution for these different font scalings and put it in a table. So I'll just make a note of that and get that fixed.
It's the same scenario I've got on my current PC here, where I can't get to that bottom button at all, and if I do, the only way to do it is by changing the scaling down to 100, which is fine for this application, but then I've got all sorts of applications in the background, and then the tabs and all the toolbars are so small I can't see them.
Yeah.
It affects all the other things as well.
Yep. Yep. So in that case, I think I don't know how to easily solve this other than just specify a higher minimum resolution if you're using font scaling. I'll ask the developers if there's some way we can, in Windows, if there's some way we can turn off the scaling just for our application, but I don't think so. Yeah, because at 1080p you really need to be at 100% scaling. 150. I could try it now, but it'll interfere with GoToMeeting. So, but that's something I need to follow up on. In any case, this is where you need to go. Maybe we need to put that in a button up here on the file menu, like it is in Altium Designer. But there's a few ways we could solve this problem. Maybe we could put a scroll bar on this list.
Yeah.
Yeah, so extensions and updates. Now I've got a ticket in to remove this hardware devices section because it's not applicable to this product. Let's go back to the installed page, because this shows you this is important, this shows you exactly what build you have installed, and we need this information sometimes for technical support or for testing, particularly in beta testing new builds. We want to know if you encounter a bug, exactly what build number it occurs in and the steps to reproduce it. So this is one place where you can find that information. The other place is here in Help and About. It's right here as well. And also, you know, maybe this is a solution to your problem as well. You can get to extensions and updates from this button right here. I forgot about that. So
Ben,
just
real
try
quick,
that.
that page that you were on previously, it shows like the supply information for competitors like Mauser, Ally.
Yeah, normally you won't see this. I've added those into mine, but normally these are not available.
Right, so it's going to be filtered just to show Newark, right?
Yeah, if you want to configure that, I guess I have a special version.
For now, yeah.
Normally for a customer of yours, the only thing, they wouldn't see any of that. All they would see will be, hello, come back to me. This is actually going to rerun the installer to remove those.
When it comes back up again, can you show me that alternative route to get it to the extensions again?
Yeah, I'll do it again.
I was just jotting it down.
It's from the Help About. So if you go to File menu, File drop-down.
Yep.
I'll do it again right now. File.
Yep.
Help. About. And on this dialog, there's this Extensions and Updates button. So click on that.
That's fine.
This is what you should see normally. Now, this is important, this configure one, because often a user will install the software. Let me just start the installer. I won't actually go all the way through installing. I guess it's in my downloads folder. Downloads. Gosh, I've got a lot of junk here I need to cull. CircuitStudio setup. So if I run the installer, okay, now normally by default when you run the installer, you'll see these are partially the default settings to only have step import. This says importers and exporters, but it's important to understand this step here means importing step models only for basically library components. But if people want to install the ORCAD and PADS importers as well as the Eagle importer, they need to come in here and check these during installation. The other, if I cancel out of that, so what will happen is they'll see funnels there, but they may be missing an importer, and this is the place to come and reinstall those importers when you come in here and check these buttons. This one here says schematic and PCB import of ORCAD files, but this, I believe, at the moment also includes the PADS PCB importer when this one's checked. Because in this initial first version, the PADS and ORCAD importers were bundled together from the wizard in Altium Designer, where, because we recognize a lot of people moving from PADS use ORCAD for schematic but PADS for PCB. And one of the reasons they want to move to a new tool is that they're frustrated with having two completely different tools from different vendors for schematics and PCBs.
So we can safely say that we can import schematic and PCBs from PADS?
At the moment, I think only the PCB importer is included, but I haven't actually tried it. So this is weird, and we've got a ticket in to change the wording on this. Because what we really mean is not PADS by the ORCAD company, obviously. It's PADS plus ORCAD. So I think at the moment we only support the PADS PCB importer. That may change. So going back to here, if we go to settings, it just brings up, this should probably be modified a little. It just brings up system settings, which has nothing to do with installing missing features, but it does have this automatic updates timer, and so this is basically how frequently it checks. You know, I like to check every day, so I'm just going to change that right now. Also, account management's an important one here. If you want it to just memorize your login so you don't ever get prompted at the beginning of using the software for login like it does, or when you check those boxes when you first start up the software and it says please sign in, and you check the boxes to say keep me signed in and remember my credentials, this is where it's storing that information as a user. So if you want to manually check what you have available to you as a plugin, or what's installed, or what updates there are, you can hit refresh. Obviously, there's no new patch. I've already applied the hotfix, so it's showing me everything's up to date.
You do a hotfix, you rev that build number?
Yes. Every time there's a change, the build number will change. And actually, I think for the hotfix, even that, I'm not sure if we change this for, but this should change for a hotfix or service pack. Maybe I'm wrong. I need to verify that with the developers, because we changed our version numbering scheme a few times over the last few years, and so I'm still a little confused on what it all means, really.
You guys did a fix here recently on the Gerber files, and I was trying to see if I had the latest installed on my computer at home, and I wasn't quite sure if that build number was supposed to match up.
The build number will tell you. So if you have this build number, 41779, then it should be that you have the hotfix. Okay, all of these other things are pretty self-explanatory. I can reopen a design I've been working on just by clicking on it. When you do that, it automatically gives you this kind of view. It loads the project, and you'll see the project hierarchy there. The reason it's taking a while, and you see down here on the status bar, starting schematic editor, is because it's generating a preview for this project documents page, which is what we're looking at here. It'll automatically open this thumbnail view of everything that's in the design. Let me just explain a bit about what all these types of documents are. Obviously, we have schematic files, PCB files. We know what those are. We have libraries. We know what those are too. Those are 100% compatible with all Altium products. So anyone can share an Altium Designer library and use it in CircuitStudio and vice versa. These settings files are for signal harnesses. So these are actually text documents with a .harness extension, and they are shown in here in the settings category, and if you double click on that, it'll open it in the text editor. It's just a text file that explains that in this harness that's been defined by the user, these are the nets that belong inside of it. So there's a connection inside with a net 3.3 VOGs, for example, and that's used to map the connectivity in the schematics to the harness objects. All this stuff here generated down here, this looks weird, this features, but this is, if you look at the path, if you hover over that and look at the path, it's showing project outputs and then ODB steps, PCB layers, outline features. So these are all features within the ODB++ outputs data set. This one here is in the drill folder. Something that's a little bit different with the way we generate ODB++, I'll mention, versus other CAD tools like Cadence, Allegro, or Mentor Graphics or whatever. They all tend to generate the whole ODB++ file structure, which is actually just a bunch of files in a folder structure. But what they do is they zip it all up into a tarball, and so the user ends up with a single file, and they send that to the manufacturer. We always just generated the file structure on your hard disk. So some users occasionally may call up and say, my fabricator doesn't know what to do with all these files I sent them on a thumb drive, and it's just because the fabricator's too lazy to recognize that it's just unzipped already, because the CAM software Genesis made by Valor that the fabricators use in the factory for making the PCB, when they say open an ODB++, typically it's looking for a .tgz file. So what you can do is you can actually just zip it up, or I think in output generation, I'll come back to that a bit later, you have an option to zip it into a single zip file. I'm pretty sure you have that option. I'm going to close this project because I want to really start from scratch, like as if I'm a brand new user. The other thing about this start page that opens normally when you've sorted out your license, then as a new fresh user with no designs yet, what you'll see is this start page. So this is comes to the documentation, which you've seen probably. Again, scroll bar to go down and go through. There's basically summaries of all the different, this is kind of like reference information, so these are a summary of all the schematic design objects. I guess this is a work in progress. Getting started really is the main thing. So this one here is what I would normally point new users to. I'd say go click on this link that's from idea to manufacture, because this is essentially the tutorial that walks you right through from absolute scratch, starting with nothing, finding some components in the existing libraries that come with the software, and also creating some components from scratch. Have any of you actually gone through this yet? I'm just curious.
I've started doing some things. Probably next week I'll probably do it a little bit more, because it's a bit difficult when I haven't got everything on the screen at once. I've just got like a snapshot of the top corner. But so far I've had a play about making the round PCB, which works absolutely fine. I've got a nice little donut-shaped one now that can move around in 3D. But I need to go through this bit that you're just talking about now.
Fantastic. So this one is a really light beginning tutorial. It really does walk through the whole process, but it does it with an extremely simple design. And one of the things I think I wanted the documentation guys to improve the board shape section, because it seems like one of the major bits of feedback we're getting is that people aren't really sure how to get the board shape that they need. So, okay, so I'm going to start a brand new project here. Everything is project-based in Altium land. You can actually just create a new document, a new schematic, standalone or PCB, and occasionally I do that. If I just need to jot down an idea, I could use a schematic as a notepad and really quickly wire up some simple circuit with a few op amps or something like that. I've also done that before in Altium Designer just for doing a really simple SPICE simulation while I'm working on a workbench. But normally the process is you do everything in a project. So I'm going to start with a new project. There's two types of projects. An integrated library, just to explain, is for creating a .intlib file. An intlib file is a binary file that combines all the different types of library files into one file. So it's a single unit that you can easily send to somebody or save on the network and have everybody use it. And so I'll touch on that a bit later. So right now I'm just going to create a PCB project. Now by default it always prompts the user to create a blank project or choose from one of the selected templates. If users want to, they can add their own templates to this list. It's pretty easy. There's just a templates folder in their installation, and most of these templates are actually, haven't been updated in years. I want to have a few additional templates added here that will be useful for the kinds of people who will buy CircuitStudio. So I would like some feedback from you guys as to what are some of the things people will want as a starting point. Just one idea, which is an example, is an Arduino shield outline. So it begins with a board that's already got the right shape for that, and already got the schematic and the PCB already have the components for the connectors that are the right ones to plug in and so on. So that's just one idea. There might be a few others that we could add. But users can add their own. It's pretty easy, and but it's a more detailed topic, which I'll cover probably in a video sometime or something like that. I'm just going to create a blank project for now. You name the project. So I'm just going to call this Overdrive, and it'll create a project by this name. It'll also create a folder by that name within this path here. So this is the default path. I'll just stick with that for now. And it creates just an empty project. The project file, just so you guys know, is also really just an ASCII text document. It's a bit like a Microsoft.ini file. You can actually edit it in a text editor if you want to. Not that there's ever really any need to do that, but no, I'm right-clicking on things a lot, so I'm so used to doing it, I don't think about it. So forgive me if I do something and please cut across and ask what I did. If you ever see a dialog appear or a menu appear and I don't explain how it appeared, please stop me and ask. So what I just did then was right-clicked on the menu. I have this sort of saying that I used to always train people in Altium Designer, and it's no different for CircuitStudio. If in doubt, right-click. We very, very much built the tool around the ability to use every part of the mouse. So there's right-click context menus for just about every single thing in this tool. So the right-click project menu, when I hover over a .prjpcb in this projects panel, this menu is specific for all the things we need to do with projects. We may need to compile it. What compiling does is it essentially analyzes all the documents in the project and builds the internal netlist. Recompiling means to essentially do the same thing. I think there's some minor differences. Recompile is a little bit faster because it is sort of only recompiles things which have changed. You can right-click and add new to project, so you can add additional documents. So someone may send you a schematic file from Altium Designer, or from another CircuitStudio user may email you a schematic file and say, hey, here's my, maybe you're collaborating on a project and they send you something and you need to add it into your project. This is where you do it. You can add an existing, you can add a new source file or library or text document to the project, or you can add existing to project and browse the network. Most of these...
You can't import a Altium schematic, right? I mean, you can't. I thought you couldn't use Altium schematic.
No, it's the PCB which is different. The schematics are the same. Oh, so okay. Anyone who's designed a schematic in Altium can add it to their project. So just for argument's sake, I'll do that. Add existing to project, and I'm going to browse to my electronic designs folder here and go for my projects. Let's see, guitar related, bifetish, top.
You made that. You wouldn't play guitar by any chance, would you?
I do.
You made that in Altium Designer, right?
I made this in Altium Designer, and this was just a little hobby project I was working on. So you can see a couple of interesting things to note here. That was interesting. Very briefly, I saw a little photograph of myself, which was in the corner title block, but now it's given me a message, and I don't know why. It's like it can't find the file, but it doesn't matter. So this is just a JFET overdrive pedal circuit. Couple of things to note. So this was done in Altium Designer. But you'll see, because I added an existing schematic, it has not actually made a copy of the schematic. What it's done is it's just linked it to the project. And I can see that by this little icon overlay. I don't know if you guys can see that easily over the web, but there's a little, it looks like the link overlay that you get on the desktop with links. And that means this is a file that's been added to the project, but it's not in the same directory tree or path as this project file. So if I wanted to add a schematic and I wanted to be really clean about it, adding a schematic that was already done and saved somewhere else, what I really should do is say save as, and then instead of saving it in the same place, I would actually go to libraries, documents. The path that I was in before was Altium. What did I name this project again? What was it? Overdrive. Should be, where did I put it?
Let me hit save.
Projects, Overdrive. It's in here. So I'll save it in here and save. And now this link overlay disappeared. So now I know that the source document I'm working with now is actually in the same folder path or a subdirectory of this project. So I'll save the project. So there it is. The issue with doing this is I've just copied the schematic, and all of these components, I don't know what library they came from or who built that library. And if I want to find out, I can double click and open the component properties. Let me just shrink that down. So we'll look at the component properties dialog here. So it's got all these normal parameters. What I'm really looking for is these models. Models, essentially, the anatomy of a component in Altium land is it has a schematic symbol, it has parametric data, and the schematic symbol ultimately, when you place the part, becomes the glue that holds everything else together, including SPICE simulation models and PCB footprints. And within the footprint, we may have a three-dimensional mechanical model as well. So this model list shows all the models, and these model links may, because again this schematic came from Altium Designer, there may be things in here like a SPICE simulation model and maybe a signal integrity analysis model even. And of course, at the moment, we all know CircuitStudio doesn't have either of those simulation capabilities. It will have SPICE simulation capability down the track. But for this initial release, we didn't have time to make sure to get that in and do all the testing that would be needed. So that will come later. So I can see the simulation model there. You can select a model. You can actually have more than one footprint attached. So I can just add as many different models as I want to this component, either right here on the schematic or within the library if I'm editing the component in the library. So I could change the footprint here, which is considered not best practice because, you know, normally this 2SK117BL from Toshiba is always, you know, Toshiba doesn't change the transistor footprint or package, right? But if I wanted to use this for an equivalent that's in a different package, I could work around it by adding a different footprint and selecting that. So the reason this is important is I may not have the library that this footprint came from either. I've got the symbol here in the schematic, but when the time comes to move this design from schematic to PCB, I'm going to need the PCB library or the integrated library that all of these parts came from so that I have that loaded. Just for argument's sake right now, I'm going to remove this from the project and again start from scratch. Notice that it just put it out to free documents, but I still have this document open in the workspace, so that's why it's still showing here under free documents. First thing I need to do, probably as a new user, is create a new schematic in my design. So I'm going to save as, and it puts me in the project folder. So I'll call this one Overdrive. Right. I may want to change some aspects of this schematic sheet. This default size A is tiny. So what I'm going to do is I could go to View and actually, where is it? I'm still getting used to the ribbon myself, so forgive me for not being perfectly fast with it. Should be home actually. Yeah, maybe that's project options. Documents. These up here are the panel controls. I'll talk about the ribbons a little bit in a while. Should be oh, here it is. It's on the project ribbon. Document options. Another way to get to document options again, of course, is the context right click. So I can right click on the sheet, go to options, document options. This is normally how I get to it. I'm used to using right click for just about everything. So go to document options, and the document options gives me sheet options, parameters, units, and if it came from a template, it shows the original template file that was used for all the background and everything. So customers can generate a standard set of templates that have their own title blocks and company information and all of that kind of stuff, and reference them in here. These other, on the right-click menu, I'll just note, these other things like document parameters and sheet really just take you to the same dialog but with a different tab in focus. So I want to change the size here to, let's go, I'm in America, so I'll choose letter, and I'll show the default title block and border and so on. I might add some parameters in here. So it's going to be 4225. Right. You get the idea. Now, none of those things appeared, which is an interesting thing. And the reason is this default template doesn't have any of those strings positioned in it. So what I want to do is I want to actually go ahead, and this is really easy here. Place text string, and while you have something on the cursor like this, I'll just zoom in so you can see it. This is the title, and I want to place some text in here. While you have something on the mouse cursor before clicking to place it, and this is the same in schematic and PCB and in the library editors, you can hit tab, and it brings up the properties of that object type before you go ahead and place it. Now in schematic, if I click the drop down, you'll see all these special strings starting with equals, and these map to parameters in the project, or in the, you see the address lines and things, organization, drawn by, author, all that stuff that was in the sheet parameters that I just edited. So I can come in here and go, I could just start typing as well and it'll suggest things. Document name. Let's edit the text there, make it Verdana, so it's a bit easier on the eyes. equals document name, and you'll see this actually shows the document file name. Although actually this one is showing it down here, so I don't it's the full name and path. What I want is actually, was it document number? Or organization. Oh, I didn't populate that one. But you get the idea. So that's normally how you'd populate a title block with meaningful text that's embedded in parameters in the sheet. And the project itself, if I go to right-click on the project and go to Project Options, we can add parameters to the project as well to make sort of global text strings that you can reference in schematic and PCB like that. So you could put the project name in here and make that part of your template, and then it's always added to the design. Okay, so what I want to do is place some components. Any other schematic, you can actually just select a bunch of stuff and Control-C and Control-V, and it'll do that for you. So the clipboard's an easy way to move things back and forth between documents. Over here you'll see a libraries panel. Let me just open that up. At the top of each panel is the title. There's some panel docking control options. On the right click menu there, you can control how it docks. And there's a little pin. This is pretty common in a lot of software now. If you just hover the mouse over it, it'll pop out. If you want it to stay there, you can pin it, or you can click on the title text and drag, and it'll separate it out. If you want to move it around to a different place, this one won't dock top or bottom because of the docking controls here. It's only allowed to dock vertically. So, but I could overlay it on this side if I wanted to. I'm used to it over here, so I'll put it over here and pin it out. By default, you'll have no libraries in the project, so I clicked on this libraries button at the top. You will have miscellaneous devices integrated library and miscellaneous connectors integrated library installed in the workspace. By default, they're in this path here. You can update the library search path. So if you're looking for a component in libraries and you use the search function, which is this button here, this is controlled by this search path. It will search anything in the project first, installed second, and whatever else is in the search path third. So you can put, you might have libraries on a network shared drive on the network, and you can add those paths in here for users to find components. So right now I'm wanting to find a generic let's go op amp. So I click the search feature and name contains op amp. Let's see. Search in available libraries, libraries and paths, etc., etc. There's a bit more control in here. That's interesting. Let's do this again. Let's try it with the space op amp. I didn't really plan this well. Okay. Or if I know the part number, like 2N3904, for example. It should find that, because that's definitely in here. 2N3904. Anyway, not sure what's going on with that. I need to do some more testing there.
No, there wasn't many parts in that library. miscellaneous library?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot. And I know one of the questions you guys were probably getting, because Eagle, for example, installs with maybe 150,000 components, but they're all there in libraries that are in the workspace, but they're not loaded, and you load them and then you can place from them. And it's kind of the same for us, but if you want to load additional libraries beyond these two sample libraries, you just do it in here. You go to installed, and we install from file, and somehow we've put, I don't know why we have those three libraries there, that big FPGA libraries, but you would normally install a library from here, but we've kind of moved all of our content like that into the Vault. And so rather than adding them to the installer, so we used to provide 100,000 parts or so in integrated libraries, and it used up a lot of additional space and made the installer really slow. So we put them all in the Vault, and we manage them and maintain and update them. So to get to those, you go to File and Vault Explorer. Now by default, the Vault is not connected after a fresh install. So what that would look like, actually I'll back out of this, so this is where you would go to System Preferences from the File menu, and here under Data Management, this will be blank by default, and you can just click this button here to connect to our Content Vault to get access to those 250 or so thousand components. So you click on that, click OK. Now you can go to this Vault Explorer, and all of our content is available for download from here. So because I have a special login, because I'm an Altium staff member, I see this internal development folder, but normally you wouldn't see that and customers won't see that. What you will see is board templates and unified components. Now within unified components, we have two folders. One's for components by manufacturer, and the other is component generic caps and resistors. And it's got the full surface mount range sorted by package size. This is package size in imperial and metric. So under here also, let me zoom out a bit here. We've got all these different manufacturers, but really as an engineer, I don't really know who I want to buy the part from yet. What I do know is what type of part I need. So I'm going to search, and again, maybe it's a transistor or an op-amp. I want a dual op-amp here.
Ben, I was trying to find a 555 timer, just a basic 555 timer. Just wondered how you would search for that.
I would search just for 555, and that's weird. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's 555s in here. Let me see. There's too many, showing too many different parameters here. 555. I would search by comment, because this, in our Vault, this typically starts with manufacturer part number. But those are part choices. I don't care about part choices. Yeah, this is really interesting because I'm not getting a result for 555 timer. You would think there'd be a 555 timer in there.
Yeah, you would.
Yet if I type LM555, I do get a direct hit. There's a whole bunch of them.
Could you proceed it with a wildcard? Do you think that's holding it off?
Yeah, wildcards should be supported. It might just be that there are too many sort of results, but operational amplifiers, linear. The other thing, you can search for text as well. So any text that's in the description or comment fields is indexed by this Volt search engine. So you could do 555 timer. Let's try timer. Timer 555. There's one there. That's a symbol for a 555. And the interesting thing is, if we look at, let me enable that. That should be up. Let me move that up. You can see the symbol here. So that's a 555. But what we want to know is, okay, well, where are the 555s that use this schematic symbol? So we click on here and go where used. And it shows this one's used by this ICM 7555. We can double click on that and it takes us to that component. So you can browse around and sort of see where things are used. Look at the preview. This one's got a basic 3D model. I guess this one's the NXP part. Yeah, so there's a few ways of doing it. I need to do some more work with the searching there and find some better ways and make a few videos to help people get what they need, but that's generally how you'd do it.
Thank you.
Is it possible to take a snapshot of the whole Volt and bring it down onto your PC?
That's always one of the first questions, and the answer is no. Because obviously we want people to remain connected, but but what you and again, I'm not entirely sure about if this feature is available in CircuitStudio, but you can download any of these parts. So
yeah, you
just can't do all of them at once. So what I can do, if let's say I want to find an ATmega MCU, so actually it's probably easier for me just to go by manufacturer. Oh, ATmega AVR. Atmel micro. I don't know why I'm not seeing their microcontroller. Oh, that's the wrong library folder. It's in here. Components. A for Atmel. Excuse me. Microcontroller. ATmega AVR. So I'll click on that. What's going on? I guess it's just communicating. So let's say I want to use this. I want an ATmega 328. The same one that's used on the Arduino. I want to use it in my design. So there's a bunch of results there. 328p. Okay, so I clicked the wrong button there, but let's say this is the one I want. I can place it directly in my schematic. This is interesting. I guess we disabled. There should be a download. I guess there was some decision to keep this online. So normally you would have to place this in the design. Once I move from schematic to PCB, it'll also pull this footprint from the vault, the latest revision of the footprints. Whichever footprint I have highlighted in here at the time I place in schematic will be the one that's sort of selected for default use. So that's shown in here, the M. So that's essentially how to find the parts. We want to create some parts perhaps. So maybe I want to create my own
Then before you create the part,
Yep.
You have something called the supply chain insight function that comes on when you're hovering over the part in the schematic.
Could you speak up a bit? Was that did you want to see that in the vault or after placing the part?
After you place the part in the schematic,
Yep.
There's a function that you guys have that's called the insight.
Yep. So you just hover over it and it shows this.
Yeah. Is it possible to disable that somehow?
That's weird. Mine's not working because I turned off the other suppliers and it's still showing them, and it shouldn't be. It is in Altium Designer possible to turn it off. It's normally in schematic.
I know that currently customers are able to see other suppliers' stock and pricing information.
Yeah, we need to fix that. This is all coming from our link to the Altium Vault, so that's just 2 feedback items. I need to get the preferences in there to turn this off, and secondarily, this is showing the correct. No, it isn't, because I thought we made a change before release that meant that it only showed Newark or Element 14 companies in the list, and I remember testing that, so I don't know why it's showing these other ones right now.
How often does this stock information refresh? Is it like every 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half hour?
As far as I know, it's like every 10 minutes or so. Okay, so if you want to start from an existing component, it is possible to place something in a schematic, and you can actually select a symbol from a schematic, or equivalently you can select a footprint from a PCB dock and then paste those into the libraries if you're creating new libraries. I'm just going to create a new schematic library and add it to the project. And a new PCB library, add it to the project. That was PCB. Well, I need that too, but I'm going to add new to project PCB library. So I've got my library files. A lot of designers like to do this and put all the parts that they used in the design in the library attached to the project. So if they ever have to open and edit the project in future, they've always got the libraries there. So that's just a useful tip. By default in schematic, you get one default component. You can't have an empty library. There's always at least one component in here, and I just double-clicked on that component in the list to bring up the default properties. So this is where I'd set the designator. So if I'm going to create, for example, a capacitor, I'd make this C question mark, and I'll call it I want to just call it electro. Call the symbol electro. I haven't got any footprints yet. I'll come back to that. I'm going to create a value parameter here actually called value, and give it a value, 10 microfarad. This means the 10 microfarad will be shown on the schematic when I place it. Another option is to make this parameter hidden, but then I can reference that parameter from in here by typing equals, and you can see the drop-down list automatically detects that I've added some parameters to the part, and I can reference those. So this is, you guys are quite familiar with Eagle, of course, so one equivalent function is like the greater than name, greater than value strings in Eagle. It's kind of the same thing. Anywhere where you see parameters in Altium products, you can reference them using this equals for schematic, or the decimal point if it's in a PCB. So this means that the comment will always come from the parameters inside the component. So I've got this part. Now I need to add some pins. Again, just like in schematic and PCB, if you want to change the properties of an object before you click to place it down, you can hit Tab. I'm not going to do that just yet because I want to highlight that the mouse cursor by default goes to the electrical hot point of the pin. This little X here means this part of the pin is where a wire would go, or if it touches the hot point of another pin, it will actually create an electrical connection that goes into the net list. The other end of the pin has the pin name next to it in line with the pin, and above the pin right now is the designator, which is the pin number. So I hit Tab, bring up the properties. Again, you can hide things. So for something like a capacitor or a resistor, I would normally want to hide the designator, but you have to have a designator. So this is going to be for a polarized capacitor, I'll call this plus, and this will be pin 1. It's a passive pin. I'll just call it positive electrode. You can hide pins. I know other tools have similar features to this too. If you can hide it and say by default connect to VCC. This is dangerous. Some people like it because it helps the schematics be less cluttered, but it's a little bit dangerous because if you mistype, if you're creating components and you make it VCC and then one day come back and go, well, I'm going to name this pin VDD, then use those two different parts in one schematic, they'll not connect together. So you can do it, but it just got to be very careful. Okay, I like to make my pins short for passive components. The other thing here is you can, if you are displaying pin names and numbers, you can customize the position and font of the name and number. So you can have a vertical pin with horizontal text above it, say for a ground pin on a chip. It's very useful to have these fields down here. Again, just like almost any other object in CircuitStudio, you can add parameters to the pin and reference those in other string sort of either on the schematic or in the component. And there are other sneaky uses for these, but it's kind of advanced stuff, so I won't go into that. So
At the moment, I'll have to go now because I've got to the end of my day over here. We're shot over by half an hour. At what time were you thinking of finishing anyway?
That's a really good question, and I guess I'm just sort of walking through slowly, showing everything, and I know it's probably too detailed.
No, it's absolutely fine because this is exactly where I need to start from. The very beginning. But I certainly don't want to miss it.
Would you guys like to stop now and then continue on from here next week and sort of do it for a few days, because it might take us a few days?
That'd be great.
Absolutely, that's fine with me. Okay, you guys over there.
I would very much like to invest. Yeah, I would like to invest the time into you all because you'll be supporting it, and I think honestly it'll be a wise investment.
Yeah. I think that'd be brilliant because I mean, certainly if it carried on, I'd certainly watch the video after. I'll probably use that as we're recording this as material, which I'll keep at my side anyway, to keep going over. But yeah, certainly I'm going to try some of these things we've been trying so far. Possibly try to get it installed on my PC at home as well, so I can carry on doing it there as well.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, we'll end for now. And then we'll carry on next week. Marisol, could you sort of corral everybody time-wise, or is this time suitable for you all? Is this a good time?
I think this is the time that best works for everyone.
It is. For me, it's the back end of the day, back end of the week, so it is quite. It does quieten off quite quickly, so it's ideal for me, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I can double check with Andre Schmidt if you'd like, just to make sure that it works for him too.
Okay, I'll just check so 8 a.m. is a good time for me. You can see it's blank every day next week. So why don't we just carry on 8 a.m. each morning until we've got everything that you guys need. I'm happy to do that. It might take the whole week, but we'll just do an hour each day.
I'll see if whatever I can fit in. If you tell me, I'll tell you if I can.
Let's do that. And then what I'd like you guys to do is play around with the things that I've showed you each day, and come back with questions if something doesn't work right.
That's fine.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, cool.
Excellent. But this is just a level at once as well that you're doing it now. This is perfect.
Yep. So I'll.
So Ben, just for clarity, so then we're on for all next week at the same time, right?
Yep.
Every day.
Yep. Let's start Monday 8 o'clock. Monday America time. I guess that's well.
If it's the same, 4 till 5.
Would that be? Is it? It's still Monday in the UK, so that'll be Monday. It's still Friday in the UK, right? It's the end of your week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're all on the same day, so that's fine. Okay, let's do that. Okay.
Okay. Thanks so much. I'll catch you all next week.
And I will. I'll send and we can probably use the exact same login and everything for GoToMeeting. If it doesn't work, if it disappears after I finish the session, I'll create a new one and send it to you all and make it an ongoing session so we can just use the same login each time.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Ben.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Cheers, guys. Have a good weekend.
Bye.